Right. Welcome back to Context. We are joined tonight by Monterey legend Roberto Dixon, longtime head wrestling coach at the Monterey High School Toreadors. He was also awarded the Golden Whistle and was named California Wrestling Coach of the Year in 2019. We are so blessed to have you here today, Coach. Thanks for joining.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, pumped. Let's just dive right in. So if you could take us through your background as a coach, how did you get into this? What was the process for you getting your first job and, landing any subsequent jobs and starting your club, and just take us through your journey. How did we get to where we are today?
Well, it started off by me trying to get my goal, which is to get to the Olympics. That was my goal. And what happened was, after losing the Olympic trials, taking second in 1988, then I didn't know what I was going to do, and that's even as a career. And my coach says, "Hey, won't you come with me and be my assistant coach and help me out with kids?" And I said, "Well, I don't know nothing about coaching kids." And so I went through the journey with him. And there was a year where he says, "Hey, you ready to take over?" And I go, "Take over what?" And I go, "I don't think so. I'm not going to take over no team. I'm not ready to do that." So then 3 years went by, and he asked me the question again because he wanted to make sure he's around for his kid. Mm-hmm. And I said, "I'm ready. I'm ready to take over. And I'm ready to make a difference I wanted to build over him." And what I mean by make the program even better than what he made it. Mm-hmm. And so after retiring, took my shoes off and I said, "Okay, I'm ready to go." And I tell you, it's been a journey what led to opportunities to opportunities to opportunities. Mm-hmm. Once I got to Monterey High, I wanted to change the culture. I wanted to change the culture and make it a family. And I had to make sure that my coaches that help me out are willing to do the same thing. So that culture started, and then I fell into another job at the same time. California USA Wrestling says, "Hey, you want to be our head freestyle coach?" And I went, "Well, wait a minute, I got a head coach job at high school. How can I do both?" Well, we worked it out where I did both. And so that journey just kept on going to opportunities. And all of a sudden now I was the USA Wrestling coach for USA Wrestling for kids who were in middle school. We went overseas to compete, and I was the head coach for that. And we ended up winning gold all the way through. But my main thing is, and I believe other coaches are like this, my journey is done. I'm trying to make differences in everybody's lives that comes through our program. Mm-hmm. Because I want to build that community and family at the same time, because my coach did it for me. Mm-hmm. My coach was my family. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I coach like that. Sometimes people say, "Well, you're a little too close to your kids." But my philosophy is, hey, you know what? If they need me to be at their birthday party, I'll be at their birthday party, because I believe we're making difference in lives. And even though those kids graduate, I'm still on them. Mm-hmm. They screw up, they're going to get a phone call. Mm-hmm. Because that community to me is so important. Mm-hmm. And I tell them too, hey, when you get rich, hey, that's all right. Take care of your family, take care of your goals that you want, but don't forget about the program. I said, you better kick down something. Or if you can't, go to another program and spread my philosophy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because that community is so important. And you'll know what I mean by this. We don't always get the best talent in the world. Mm-hmm. We have to make our talent. Mm-hmm. We have to put in so much time. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's important. and also that once we have our kids, they'll do anything for us, anything. And they might not be the most talented, but I tell you what, they'll give us their heart and soul. And that's why I coach at Monterey High, because I think that's important. I think I'm still making a difference, and that journey has been incredible. I mean, it's been incredible by seeing kids grow up, seeing kids in businesses, seeing them just sprout out. And I tell you what, I get fired up every time I go in the room, because, hey, I get to make 60 people make sure they meet their goal in life, and don't forget family. And it's incredible feedback. It's incredible. And I don't want no money. I just want it to be a good experience and journey.
Yep.
Because when I first started coaching, it was all about winning. And you know what I mean by that? We're young. It was winning. And there was a time where I wasn't winning. And I know he's not going to like me mention his name, but Dwayne Morgan came to me and said, "Hey, what's going on, Bert?" I said, "Man, I'm not winning, man. I got to get at somebody's state every year." He goes, "That's where you're losing it." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "It's not about winning. It's about the journey." And I've been using that philosophy ever since I've been coaching. Yeah, winning is nice, but man, when you're making a difference in lives, that is awesome.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Here's where I want to follow up. A couple things that came up in that I was clearly unaware of, that you were the USA national coach for middle schoolers, and you went overseas and won gold medals. That's awesome. Had no idea. And, we've known each other for years. The other thing that I think is very interesting you didn't talk about is the freestyle club that you currently run, that you still run. I don't know if that's part of the wrestling head coach freestyle thing or not, but for our listeners that may not understand who you are, you're an elementary school teacher that coaches wrestling, which is one of the most physical, let's call it combative sports there is. And you're doing it not just at your high school, for the national team. And by the way, you run a club on the side to give more access to kids. Can you talk a little bit about the club piece that maybe I missed, and how being an elementary school teacher has informed your path and your journey and what you've tried to grow there?
Elementary teacher came in also by accident, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. The club came with the high school job, but the elementary part is so important because it brings you back down to earth. And what I mean by that is I have to teach simple. So I get that to the high school, and all of a sudden it's simple. It's not confusing for kids. Now the club goes both ways. I have a high school club, and then I have the sports center club, because I love teaching little kids. I love it. And when I'm teaching that club at the sports center, I tell the parents, I said, they're going to be tired after this class, so you better be ready. They're going to sleep right away. And it is so much fun. I get to play. And not a lot of coaches get that ability to have a little kids club and have fun, just playing, but they're learning wrestling. And then I hop over to the high school and do the freestyle club there. Yes, it's a little serious, but it's still fun. Our club is available for anybody on the peninsula, anybody in the state. They can come and work out with us, because that's my job as a national coach for California USA Wrestling. I don't charge anybody for any of this. I give that knowledge free. And I tell you, our club makes our high school successful. Our little kids club, all I'm doing there is making sure I spread wrestling around the peninsula. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what school you go to. The funny thing, we had a kid from Carmel, Olandis. He just won the section tournament last year, and He came to our club every Tuesday and Thursday. He lives in Kachawa,
Oh,
and he comes every day. And the cool part about him is that he says, "Man, if it wasn't for the club, I don't think I'll be a CCS champion."
mhm.
And I said, "Well, you know what? Make sure you spread that around. Where if you have a little kid, you have a club. Make sure you let anybody in the club you want."
Mhm.
And I love the club. It's one of my, besides high school, teaching little kids in the club I think is essential in any program. And it reminds me to be simple.
Yeah, and I would say because my son has benefited from it. He didn't. I mean, wrestling and basketball in California are in the same season, and I'm a
Right.
basketball coach, and there's a pretty good chance he's going to end up playing basketball. But I wanted him to be coached by you, so I made him start going to wrestling, and he didn't want to go. And then it became, hey, can we go tonight? And it was that whole mentality of, yeah, we'll take anybody. We don't care. Let's get it in. And super transformational in his journey, and I've always appreciated that. So it makes sense now that you describe the philosophy of why, when I called, it was like, yeah, sure, whatever, come on over. I thought it was just because you were doing me a favor, but it wasn't. So all good. Here's my follow-up. When you became the head coach, right? You said your coach asked you, I'm not ready yet. Then he asked you again, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. I've got this. I'm now the head coach of Monterey High. I'm now the head coach of USA Wrestling. Pick your timeline. But what is it that you realized very quickly that you still needed to figure out? You thought you were ready, and then all of a sudden you weren't.
I think the stuff that the wrestling part was easy. That's easy. It was filling out paperwork. It was, being a young adult. Was I ready to take the responsibility of somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
To be responsible for that student athlete, making sure his grades are good, uh, making sure that he's running, making sure that he's eating, and it was I could say in my mind I was willing to take that responsibility, and I still believe that I'm making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
When he asked me the first time, I wasn't ready to take that responsibility on as a young adult. You're a young adult, you got all the freedom in the world. All I did was walk in and walk out.
Yep.
And by me saying yes, I was willing to take the responsibility because I thought I could make a difference and make kids grow.
Yeah. Are there specific things you could point to in regards to if you were going to take a different job, say, or you were going to advise one of the many assistants you've had that are new head coaches or have become head coaches that, hey, these are the things you need to be alert to besides paperwork. And now you are, the buck stops with you, and all these assistants report to you, and you're responsible for these kids. But are there other tangibles that you're like, hey, these, boom, 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 you need to be on this when you're in charge?
Yes. I have always told my assistant coaches that leave and go on, like the Pacific Grove High School coach, Travis Selfridge. He was my assistant for many years. And I said, hey, number one, you have to be the one that writes out the practices. You have to be the one that, hey, because the buck stops with you. If a kid doesn't know this move, well, you got to make sure everybody knows it. You have to be the one, hey, cleaning the mats, taking that responsibility on. But the most important thing, technique beats everything. Yeah, you might want to be in a weight room. Yeah, you might want to be conditioned as super athlete, but technique beats everything, no matter who they are. And that's the most important. Technique, conditioning, all right, and then nutrition. Those steps that you have to do, especially in this day and age, because all sports are not like when we went to school.
Mm-hmm.
Technique wasn't as important. Technique now is humongous.
Okay.
And those are the tips that I gave him to make sure his athletes perform.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a super athlete, you got to make sure they drill after practice. When practice is done, everybody's home. You got to make sure that athlete drills, either drilling early in the morning with you or drilling after practice.
Right.
And like I said, technique is humongous,
So,
and technique that fits your philosophy.
right. So that's his natural segue. You're giving Travis advice to start or to take over at Pacific Grove. And, there's a bunch of other of your coaching tree out there coaching. What is it that you would say is the best thing you do in your program that has the largest ripple effect on culture? You talked about family. You talked about
Right.
the importance of setting that culture from day one when you took over. What would you say is the best thing you do that someone could point to and say, that's really important to how Coach Dixon sustains the culture he's created at all of these jobs he's holding?
You have to be dedicated to your job, and you have to be honest with your athletes, because your athletes could read you if you're not honest.
Mhm.
It is, and also your athletes have to know they got to buy in. They got to buy into what your philosophy is. It's my philosophy is, like I said, family. And I'm really got a bond with my kids,
Mhm.
and I know what they're capable of. Some coaches are not close to their kids,
Mhm.
and believe it or not, some of my kids evaluate me. You know, they evaluate me and they go, "Hey, coach, I don't think you did this the right way." I go, "Yeah, all right, let's sit down and talk."
So let's talk about that. Is that something that you intentionally created and have leaned on over the years, or did that just come from the relationships that you've built with your athletes?
It came from the relationships that I have with my athletes, and even my assistant coaches. They go, "Hey, I don't think we should have showed him that." I go, "Well, you got a better thing," and because that's why my philosophy is open.
Mhm.
I'm not one of those coaches that, "Hey, this is the way it is and this is the way it has to go."
Mhm.
I know that if you do that, then you stop learning and the kids stop learning.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. I mean, it makes me wonder if there's a way for us older coaches to build that in intentionally, where we almost plan for evaluations of ourselves with our athletes, right?
Yeah.
Versus as younger coaches, we're probably not secure enough to have that feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a really good point, and I haven't thought of it in that way. I have those same conversations, but
Right.
now I'm thinking, how do we institutionalize that? So thanks for sharing that. What do you think? And again, you as an elementary school teacher, you're often trying to figure out what works. But I
Right.
wonder, as you've coached for so long in your discipline and you have such a large network in wrestling, what have you learned watching other teams, whether it's other wrestling teams or say basketball, but things that you've noticed that you've been able to be like, oh, we're doing that and
Right.
we're bringing that in now. And here's the impact that it's had.
Um, I look at almost every sport. I even look at professional sports on just how coaches talk,
Mm-hmm.
how they're with their kid, how with their with a pro athlete that makes millions, and but you could still teach them something.
Mm-hmm.
I look at our field hockey coach, because g- girls are incorporated in wrestling now,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to relearn, reteach myself how to coach girls, because coaching girls and boys are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a funny story is, hey, I'm telling, usually when kids are drilling and stuff, I said, I'll go, "Hey, I don't want it this way, but this way's better." Well, a girl was crying, and I'm like, "Why are you crying?" She goes, "You just yelled at me." I go, "No, I'm just telling you that's great, but this is another way." And I go, "Oh, I can't talk so aggressive. I have to change my way of coaching."
Mm-hmm.
And I take away stuff from people. It's amazing what I do, and I watch. Even when we go back to nationals in Fargo doing freestyle, I watched other states warm up, how they talk, how does the athlete react, you know. like I used to just coach in jeans and just kind of, I took this from the NBA. I just, and basketball coaches. I used to just dress in sweatpants, t-shirt. All right, let's go. Well, I looked at basketball coaches, man, they have a tie on, they have a button down. They always, have dress shoes. I do that for every dual meet. And that's showing the kids that, hey, coach is respecting us. And he's respecting the school. I stole that from basketball, and I'm kind of like, hey, all right, the kids are acting real different. Oh, they know I'm serious. And it's just, I steal techniques. I steal drilling. The field hockey coach, she did stations. I converted into our weight station, where every station there's a different exercise. But it wasn't like push-ups, sit-ups. It was like doing repetitions with medicine balls, kettlebells. And I went back that next year, and after practice, we're doing stations. And you know what? The kids, they rather do stations than go in a weight room that has plates all over the place. Like that different version. And but I learn every day. And I think that's really, really important. I'm not one of those coaches, like I said, I'm just set in one certain way.
Right.
I can't do that, because then I don't learn, the kids don't learn. Now wrestling is boring.
Yeah.
Well,
I think those are all great examples, especially the acknowledgement that you need to know your personnel, be it male, female, whomever. They're all different. And
right.
How do you connect with them? And you spend so much time on the relationship, it's probably more fluid than it would be for others. But
right.
I think it's such a good point. And then to be able to go, I'm a wrestling coach and I went out to field hockey, but I was able to get something from that. It's great information for the listeners to understand. You don't have to have tunnel vision in your sport. There's so much more you can take. I mean, who would have thought Coach Dixon is now dressing up in a coat and tie because it's not a basketball coach doing?
Yeah.
Love it. That's awesome. So following up on that, I think that's a really good transition, which is, how has your approach to coaching changed throughout your career? You said you're always trying to go, you're always trying to do things. What's something that maybe you used to do, but now you're on the other side of the spectrum in regards to how you've shifted in your approach?
I shifted on, myself. I was so successful that I was always warming up really, really hard. I mean, I was so in shape. I used to sweat off a match, and I realized that I have to adjust to the athlete. I have to, because people react different. Everybody's different, and I have got so much better at recognizing, hey, you better, instead of doing arm drags, do a double leg, because arm drag is a waste for you because you don't do them. And I realized that nobody wrestles like me. I have to make sure that I know my athlete, and that's changed for me big time. It's also, the other thing that changed for me is, I didn't do that much weight training. Believe it or not, everybody thinks, oh man, you're a monster. No, I did a lot of push-ups, sit-ups, dips. That was my regimen. Well, you know what? Nowadays, you have to weight lift at every sport has to do it. I thought was, hey, you know what? Push-ups, sit-ups. Okay, then technique. You got to incorporate that weightlifting somehow, some way. But I've been really adaptive, and I spend a lot of time knowing my athletes, because sometimes, some kids, I could go, hey, don't let that person take you down. Well, he's going to own you. Well, versus I go to another athlete, say, hey, did you warm up the right way? I have to know that athlete. And I every year I have to make sure I know my athlete.
Yeah.
And it's been something where it's changed my wrestling coaching career big time.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that speaks to the maturity that we hopefully develop the longer we're in this business. I mean,
That's right.
if we were still coaching like we were when we were 22, 23, there's probably something wrong with how we're approaching the world.
That's right.
Even if we're winning all the time, because it means if you're, it's 2020, if we're coaching like we were in 1990, we're missing the boat on something.
Right.
A little bit of a curveball, and I'm curious if you have anything that fits with this, and if you don't, it's all just pass. But
Okay.
I stole this from Tim Ferriss. Do you have a favorite failure that you have leaned on throughout your coaching career?
Favorite failure.
Or something that was so transparent to you because you weren't successful that it changed the way you did things moving forward, and that's become a part of your ligature?
I can tell you that I have tried every sport before I tried wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And it was where, hey, I even played basketball, but I was kind of short. So, funny story for you. I played basketball. Man, I finally got my chance to go in. This is middle school at King Junior High, right?
Go Panthers.
So then I went in. I did everything the coach said. I shot the hoop. I made 6 points. And she goes, hey, have a seat. I'm like, what? And I was like, I just made 6 points. I did everything you did. You told me to. And I sat down like almost half of the season. I went, I don't think basketball is for me. Football, I didn't like getting yelled at. Hey, I did my job. It's not my fault that he didn't do his job. And I was never a team kind of guy.
Yeah.
And then when wrestling came on, I can make my own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And if I fail, it's my fault,
Mm-hmm.
nobody else's.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, if it wasn't for me trying those other sports, I don't think I would have wrestled. Believe it or not, I tried to quit wrestling my sophomore year, because freshmen weren't in high school. My sophomore year, man, hey, for the second time, junior high, I tried it. Man, first day of practice, 100 push-ups, you're crazy. That mindset of exercising to death,
Yep.
And I went to high school. Man, I wasn't the top dog, man. I got worked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be number one JV, I had to go through 6 people.
Mm.
So I said, I'm not doing that. That's all right. Well, the 3 captains realized that I guess I was pretty good. So I'm on my way to the bus stop to go home. I'm walking. Right when I got on the bus, hey, where you going? Hey, what do you mean where I'm going? They go, you're not going home. I go, what are you talking about? They grabbed me, marched me all the way back to the wrestling room, and I never left ever since.
That's an awesome story. And thank goodness that you have people looking out for you like that. And it goes to one of my cliches that sometimes our best decisions are made by other people. And
That's right.
you have benefited tremendously from those guys standing up and telling you, nah, man, you're not quitting. We're going to get it done. Here's another follow-up to it, the earlier question, but it's more, I think, about recency, primacy versus, the duration of your career. But
right.
What do you think you've most recently changed your mind on from a coaching standpoint? I used to believe this, and now I believe this, and here's why.
I used to believe that if you're dominant on your feet, you could win a match in wrestling. Mm-hmm. If you're dominant, not in high school, because if you cannot score on a person on the bottom or can't score on a person on top, you're not going to win the match. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is, being a national coach, when you wrestle a guy from Pennsylvania or Iowa or Michigan, you can beat them on the feet. Mm-hmm. When they get on top of you, mm-hmm. they're going to work you. Mm-hmm. You get on the bottom, they're going to get up. So I had to change my philosophy in wrestling because the times of wrestling has changed. Because before, when I was a kid, you're dominant on your feet, you weren't going to lose. Mm-hmm. Now I had to change. I had to become a good rider. And the funny thing is, I had to get on the mat to learn more about riding and scoring on people. And at my age, no coach at my age will go down on the mat and do that. And my past wrestlers, they come in and I say, hey, get on top. I got to get away, or, hey, you're on the bottom. Try to get away. I had to learn myself to make sure my wrestlers are going to get better and believe in my philosophy on top and bottom. Yeah. And believe it or not, Travis Selfridge was part of that because he was a monster on top and bottom. On our feet, he was weak. And so I learned from him a lot.
Nice. So the takeaway I have there is, clearly you're never too far along your coaching career to learn something new.
Correct.
And two, you have to be willing to humble yourself to understand where you're weak and figure out a solution for how to grow there, which is a huge eye-opening when you've found so much success early. Well, why would I change? And the game has changed and right. It becomes, you have to adapt. Right. And so I think that's the point of the question is really to try to identify how you've adjusted to thinking about things and been willing, right, to see the other side of the coin when often we're entrenched. No, this is how we do it. So,
right.
Again, great story that really, I think, enlightens and highlights that for people to digest. I got one more question for you, Coach.
Okay.
We jump in the DeLorean. We go back in time to the beginning. What advice would you give your younger self as a coach?
As a coach?
Year one, head coach, assistant coach, you choose. The point of the question being, how can I help myself get to this version of myself quicker?
Work on more technique, because I was more conditioning and blast double. Nobody's going to stop, but work on more technique. Be open, be more open-minded.
Be more open-minded. Besides technique, are there things that you could highlight that may or may not be wrestling specific that would make that advice, be more open-minded, more tangible for the coaches that are listening here? Hey, here's one or two ways in which, I didn't hear this until 20 years later because I wasn't willing to.
Always make yourself better every day teaching. Always challenge yourself every day as a coach. Evaluate yourself as a coach. And what I mean by evaluate is, hey, was that practice good, bad? Oh, this is what I have to do. And make sure you have feelings towards your athletes. And that might be wrong, but it works for me. Mm-hmm. I understand the athlete. Back in the day when you had kids working at the same time they have to wrestle, well, hey, dude, we could compromise. Mm-hmm. I was younger, I would say, you either work or you wrestle. There's no okay. Mm-hmm. Now you have to compromise because kids are going through so much. Mm-hmm. I wish I had that when I was younger, big time, because I lost a lot of good kids saying, hey, you could work or you could wrestle. That's it. You got to choose one.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say kids have changed. I would say that comes from your maturity as a coach, which has now taken it being about you to being about them, right?
Yes.
This kid's circumstance is different than kid B. And right. I need to meet them both where they are. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad coach. If anything, it makes me human. And to your point, be close to your kids. I mean, that's the same thing. It used to be transactional. right? What am I getting out of this as this kid finds success, to now where Coach Morgan told you, right? And Dwayne in his raspy voice telling you, hey, you know, it's not about winning, it's about the journey. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of this thing. And I think that's a great way to wrap up. Thank you for being here. It's awesome to talk to you as usual.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. And you know, like I said, I like giving my knowledge out. There's no big secret. Is any coach wants to call me or ask me about stuff, or, you know, that I think that's what we have to do as coaches now is help the other coaches, and we all be at one. And Jeff understands my philosophy of we all got to work together. You know, we're a small community, and we don't have, you know, 300 people knocking at the door to play basketball. We have to work together or wrestle. You know, got to work together.
Yeah, love it. Okay, well, since you're putting the offer out there, where can people find you on the socials? I know you're a big social media guy.
Yeah, Instagram is just the Monterey Instagram, Monterey Wrestling Instagram. I'm on. Also, we have a web page on our Facebook page, and you could just look up Roberto Dixon. I'm on there. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that till the other day, 3 years ago. A kid interviewed me. He's coming to our school because he's military. He calls me, and I said, "Who is this?" He goes, "Is this Roberto Dixon?" Yeah, yes, it is. Well, can I ask you about the program? I go, "Why?" He goes, "Well, I'm gonna go there next year, and I want to make sure I got a good wrestling program I'm going to." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So, and he just said Roberto Dixon. Bam.
Yep.
It's up there, so.
That's the old school answer, right? It's not at Coach Dixon on Twitter. It's Google me.
Yeah.
All right, Coach.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Seeing you soon.
All right. Tell your son I said hi.
I will.